At Chicago O'Hare International Airport, chaos erupted as hundreds of passengers found themselves stranded by an unprecedented winter storm. The terminal buzzed with frustration and anger as flight after flight displayed the dreaded canceled status. Among the sea of weary travelers, a single mother clutched her boarding pass, tears threatening to spill from her eyes. Her father had suffered a heart attack in Los Angeles, and this was her last chance to reach him. What happened next would restore faith in humanity and prove that even in the darkest moments, light could shine through in the most unexpected ways. As gate agents announced another overbooked flight, tensions rose to a breaking point. Shouting matches broke out between stressed passengers, each believing their journey more important than the next. But then, a tall figure walked through the terminal, his presence immediately drawing attention despite his casual attire and attempts to remain unnoticed. Keanu Reeves, the Hollywood star known for his kindness as much as his acting, assessed the situation with quiet intensity. No one expected what he would do next, an act of generosity that would cascade through the lives of every person at that gate, proving that sometimes the greatest stories of human compassion unfold not on the silver screen, but in the ordinary moments of crisis that unite us all. Lisa Martinez gripped her phone tightly, rereading the message from the Los Angeles hospital. Her father's condition had worsened overnight, and the doctors couldn't promise he would make it through the next day. The fluorescent lights of O'Hare Airport cast harsh shadows under her eyes, evidence of sleepless nights spent working extra shifts at the dental office to save enough for an emergency ticket. Her 7-year-old daughter Sophie stayed behind with a neighbor, understanding even at her young age that Grandpa needed Mommy more right now. The guilt of leaving Sophie twisted in Lisa's stomach, adding to her mounting anxiety. The last-minute ticket had cost nearly 2 months' rent, draining the small emergency fund she'd carefully built over 3 years as a single parent. Running her fingers through her untidy dark hair, Lisa checked her boarding pass again. Flight 2473 to Los Angeles, scheduled to depart in 90 minutes. She'd chosen the red-eye flight because it was cheapest, but now every second felt like an eternity. Her father had always been her rock, stepping in to help raise Sophie after Lisa's husband walked out 4 years ago. Now, when he needed her most, she might not make it in time. The terminal grew more crowded as delayed passengers from other flights filtered in, their faces showing varying degrees of frustration and resignation. Lisa clutched her small carry-on bag, containing only a change of clothes and her father's favorite photo album. She hadn't even packed a toothbrush, thinking only of reaching the hospital as quickly as possible. A baby started crying somewhere in the crowd, and Lisa felt tears prick at her own eyes. She remembered how her father would sing Spanish lullabies to Sophie, his voice rough but gentle, teaching her the songs his mother had sung to him in Mexico. The thought that Sophie might never hear those songs again made her throat tighten. She pulled out her wallet, counting the remaining bills for the 10th time, barely enough for a taxi from LAX to the hospital. The gate agent's voice crackled over the intercom, announcing a slight delay due to incoming weather. Lisa's heart sank as she watched snow begin to fall outside the massive terminal windows. Each delicate flake felt like another moment slipping away from her precious time with her father. She hadn't told him she was coming, afraid to give him false hope if something went wrong. Now, watching the weather deteriorate and the terminal fill with more displaced passengers, she wondered if she should have stayed home with Sophie instead of risking everything on this desperate journey. Little did Lisa know that this night would become more than just a race against time to reach her dying father. The next few hours would remind her that even in the darkest moments, when all hope seems lost, the world still holds a capacity for extraordinary kindness, and sometimes heroes appear in the most unexpected forms. The first signs of trouble came when the gate agent's expression changed while reviewing something on her computer screen. She whispered urgently to her colleague, both of them glancing nervously at the crowded terminal. Lisa noticed their concern, her stomach tightening with familiar dread. After 20 minutes of hushed conversation and phone calls, the gate agent cleared her throat and turned on the microphone. The announcement hit the terminal like a thunderclap. Flight 2473 had been overbooked by 15 seats due to the consolidation of canceled flights. The airline needed volunteers to take a later flight, offering vouchers and hotel accommodations. A collective groan rippled through the crowd, followed by angry mutters and sharp questions. Lisa felt the floor sway beneath her feet. There wasn't going to be a later flight. Not for her. Not for her father. Business travelers in press suits immediately crowded the desk, waving priority boarding passes and arguing about their status levels. A young mother with 3 children burst into tears, explaining they were traveling to a funeral. An elderly couple held hands tightly, their faces drawn with worry about missing their grandson's wedding. Each story carried its own weight of urgency and desperation. Lisa hung back, her hands trembling as she clutched her boarding pass. She didn't have status or a first-class ticket. She hadn't paid full price. In the cruel mathematics of modern air travel, she knew where she stood. The acid taste of fear rose in her throat as she watched the gate agents try to manage the growing chaos. Her phone buzzed. Another message from the hospital. Her father's blood pressure was dropping. Through the mounting tension, a subtle shift occurred in the crowd. People began turning their heads, voices dropping to whispers. A tall man in a black jacket had entered the gate area, his long dark hair partially hiding his face. He moved with quiet purpose, settling into an empty seat near the window. Despite his attempts to remain inconspicuous, there was no mistaking Keanu Reeves. The actor's presence created a strange calm in the immediate area, as if people were suddenly conscious of their behavior. He sat quietly, observing the scene with thoughtful eyes. Lisa noticed how he watched each person who approached the desk, his expression showing genuine concern for their distress. He made no move to use his celebrity status to demand special treatment, though surely he could have. The gate agent's voice crackled over the intercom again, this time with increasing urgency. They needed 7 more volunteers to deplane, or they would have to start removing passengers based on fare class and booking time. Lisa's heart pounded. She had booked her ticket just 6 hours ago. Tears began rolling down her cheeks as she realized she would almost certainly be bumped from the flight. A businessman nearby noticed her distress. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice softer than she expected. Lisa tried to speak but could only shake her head, holding up her phone to show the hospital messages. The businessman's face softened with understanding, and he stepped back, creating a small space for her to move toward the desk. Other passengers noticed the exchange, and a quiet ripple of compassion moved through the crowd. Keanu Reeves had noticed too. He stood slowly, his tall frame drawing even more attention. Instead of heading to the desk, however, he moved carefully through the crowd toward Lisa. His approach was gentle, as if trying not to startle a frightened animal. The terminal grew quieter, passengers watching with curiosity as the famous actor stopped beside the crying woman no one had noticed minutes before. The storm outside intensified, snow swirling against the dark windows. The terminal lights flickered once, adding to the tension. Gate agents spoke rapidly into phones, trying to find solutions. The clock on the wall showed midnight approaching. In Los Angeles, Lisa's father lay in a hospital bed, time slipping away with each passing minute. The next few moments would transform an ordinary airport crisis into something extraordinary, touching lives in ways no one could have predicted. Throughout the terminal, phones emerged to record what was happening, but something about the genuine emotion of the moment made most people lower their devices. This wasn't entertainment. It was raw human drama unfolding in real time. As Lisa wiped tears from her eyes, she found herself face to face with one of the most famous actors in the world. What happened next would remind everyone present that sometimes the greatest acts of heroism have nothing to do with movie scripts or special effects. Keanu Reeves stood quietly beside Lisa, his presence creating a small bubble of calm in the chaotic terminal. Without fanfare or announcement, he spoke softly, asking if she would share what was troubling her. His voice carried genuine concern, devoid of any celebrity pretense. Lisa found herself telling him about her father, the words tumbling out between quiet sobs. She explained how her father had raised her alone after her mother passed away when she was 12, how he had worked 2 jobs to put her through college, never complaining, always encouraging her to chase her dreams. When her own marriage fell apart, he had been there, helping with Sophie, offering wisdom and support when she felt most lost. Now he lay in a hospital bed 3,000 miles away, and she might not get the chance to say goodbye. The actor listened intently, his eyes never leaving her face, showing no impatience or judgment. Around them, other passengers stopped their own complaints, drawn into the story of family love and sacrifice. The businessman who had first noticed Lisa's distress moved closer, followed by the young mother with 3 children. The elderly couple held hands tighter, seeing their own life story reflected in Lisa's words. Keanu shared a brief story about his own father, who had left when he was young, and how that absence had shaped his understanding of what makes a true parent. His words carried the weight of personal experience, creating a connection that transcended his celebrity status. Lisa found herself nodding, recognizing the shared pain of parental loss, even though their circumstances were different. The gate agent approached cautiously, apologetically explaining that they needed to start boarding soon. The overbooked situation remained unresolved. Lisa's hands began trembling again, but Keanu turned to address the gathered crowd. He spoke about community, about how moments of crisis reveal human character. His voice, though quiet, carried throughout the terminal. Other passengers began sharing their own stories. The young mother explained how her children's father had passed away suddenly, making this funeral trip their final chance to say goodbye to their grandfather. The elderly couple spoke of their grandson, a young man who had overcome addiction and was now starting a new life with his marriage. The businessman revealed he was traveling to meet his first grandchild, born prematurely that morning. As each story unfolded, something remarkable happened in the terminal. People began looking at each other differently, seeing beyond their own frustrations to recognize the shared humanity in their situations. A woman offered her first-class seat to the young mother with children. 2 college students volunteered to take a later flight, despite having spring break plans waiting in Los Angeles. Through it all, Keanu remained beside Lisa, his presence both protecting and empowering her. He asked questions about her father, his favorite music, his dreams for Lisa and Sophie, the lessons he had taught her. These simple questions allowed Lisa to share the essence of her father, painting a picture of a man who had dedicated his life to making others' lives better. The snow continued falling outside, but inside the terminal, the atmosphere had transformed. Phones remained lowered, as if everyone understood that this moment deserved to be experienced rather than recorded. The gate agent's eyes glistened with tears as she worked to reorganize the passenger manifest, touched by the wave of compassion sweeping through her gate. Lisa found herself surrounded by a makeshift family of strangers, each offering what they could: a tissue, a kind word, a shared story of loss and love. Keanu's initial act of stopping to listen had created a ripple effect, reminding everyone present that behind every boarding pass was a human story worthy of attention and care. The clock continued its relentless march toward departure time, but the frantic energy of earlier had been replaced by something more meaningful. As the gate agent prepared to make another announcement, Keanu squeezed Lisa's shoulder gently, a gesture that promised this night would end differently than she had feared. The solution he was about to propose would prove that sometimes the greatest journeys aren't about reaching a destination, but about the connections made along the way. In those moments before the announcement, Lisa realized that regardless of what happened next, she had already received a precious gift. Her father's story, their shared love, had touched hearts and reminded everyone present that in times of crisis, human kindness can transform even the coldest night into something beautiful. As Keanu stepped forward to address the gate agent, the entire terminal held its breath, waiting to see how this extraordinary night would unfold. Keanu approached the gate agent's desk with quiet determination, engaged in a lengthy discussion while other passengers watched with anticipation. After several minutes of conversation and multiple phone calls, he turned to address the crowd, his voice carrying naturally through the terminal without need for the intercom. He explained that he had chartered a private bus to Los Angeles. The journey would take longer than flying, but he offered to personally cover hotel stays along the way for anyone who couldn't make the flight. He would travel with them, ensuring everyone reached their destination safely. The airline agreed to refund all tickets, meaning passengers could choose between the flight and this alternate arrangement without financial penalty. The terminal fell silent as people processed this unexpected solution. The young mother with 3 children burst into tears of relief. A bus journey would actually be easier with her active kids. The elderly couple exchanged glances, remembering cross-country road trips from their youth. The businessman closed his laptop, a slow smile spreading across his face as he realized this could be an adventure worth sharing with his future grandchild. Lisa stood frozen, overwhelmed by the magnitude of this gesture. Keanu walked back to her, explaining that he had already called ahead to several hospitals in cities along the route. They had arranged for her father's doctors to coordinate with medical facilities where the bus would stop, ensuring he would receive updates about her progress. His voice carried gentle assurance as he promised they would get her to Los Angeles. Other passengers who still needed to make the flight began offering their seats to those with the most urgent situations. The gate agent, moving with renewed purpose, began reorganizing the manifest. Those who chose to fly wished safe travels to those taking the bus, exchanging contact information and promises to stay in touch. The crisis that had threatened to divide them had instead created a community. Through her tears, Lisa watched Keanu working with airport staff to arrange the logistics. He showed no signs of impatience or superiority, treating every detail with careful attention. He ensured special meals would be available for those with dietary restrictions, arranged for blankets and pillows to be brought aboard the bus, and personally called ahead to hotels along the route. The snow continued falling outside, but inside, the atmosphere had transformed completely. Passengers who had earlier been arguing now helped each other organize their belongings and exchange information. Someone started a group chat for the bus brigade, as they began calling themselves. The elderly couple shared homemade cookies they had packed for their grandson's wedding, turning the gate into an impromptu gathering of friends. Lisa called her neighbor watching Sophie, explaining the situation through tears of gratitude. She could hear her daughter in the background, excited about her mom's adventure with a movie star. For the first time since receiving news of her father's condition, Lisa felt hope replacing her fear. She wasn't traveling alone anymore. She had a whole community supporting her journey. As the gate agent began boarding the flight, Keanu gathered those taking the bus. He spoke quietly with each person, learning names, understanding needs, and ensuring everyone felt comfortable with the arrangement. His celebrity status seemed to fade into the background as he became simply another traveler helping others in need. The decision to take this alternate path would prove to be more than just a solution to an overbooked flight. It would become a reminder that sometimes life's most meaningful moments come from embracing the unexpected, from choosing connection over convenience. As the group prepared to leave the terminal, they carried with them not just their belongings, but the beginning of a story that would impact each of their lives in ways they couldn't yet imagine. The chartered bus pulled away from O'Hare International Airport just after midnight, snowflakes dancing in the headlights. Inside, passengers settled into comfortable seats, the tension of the airport terminal replaced by a sense of shared adventure. Keanu had arranged for hot coffee and tea to be brought aboard, the warm beverages helping to chase away the winter chill. Lisa sat near the front, watching the city lights fade into the darkness of the highway. Her phone displayed a message from the hospital. Her father had stabilized slightly, giving her precious extra hours. The young mother, Sarah, sat across the aisle, her children finally sleeping under soft blankets Keanu had somehow procured. The elderly couple, Tom and Martha, shared stories of their own cross-country adventures from decades past. As the bus cruised through the night, conversations flowed naturally. The businessman, James, revealed he'd been so focused on his career that he'd missed many family moments. This unexpected detour felt like a sign to reprioritize his life. A college student named Miguel shared his dreams of becoming a filmmaker, eyes bright with excitement as Keanu listened intently and offered gentle encouragement. For hours into the journey, they stopped at a small diner in Iowa. Despite the late hour, the owner kept the kitchen open, serving warm meals to the travelers. Keanu sat with different groups, sharing stories from his own life, not as a celebrity, but as someone who understood loss, hope, and the importance of human connection. Lisa found herself telling the others about her father's journey from Mexico, his sacrifices, and his unwavering belief in the power of education. Back on the bus, the group watched the sunrise paint the sky in brilliant colors. Someone started singing softly, an old folk song about traveling home. Others joined in, their voices blending in the quiet morning hours. Lisa recorded a video for her father, showing him the sunrise and introducing her new friends. The hospital nurse who played it for him later said he smiled, squeezing her hand in response. Throughout the day, the bus stopped every few hours, allowing passengers to stretch and rest. At each stop, the group stayed together, sharing meals and stories. The children adopted everyone as honorary aunts and uncles, their innocent joy bringing smiles to tired faces. Keanu arranged for comfortable hotel rooms during necessary rest periods, but many passengers chose to gather in common areas, unwilling to miss any moment of this extraordinary journey. Lisa received regular updates about her father's condition. Each time her phone buzzed, the entire bus fell silent, holding their breath until she shared the news. When doctors reported improvement in his vital signs, the whole group celebrated. When concerns arose, they surrounded her with support and encouragement. The elderly couple shared their own story of nearly losing their son years ago, reminding Lisa that hope often arrives in unexpected ways. As they crossed state lines, passengers took turns being unofficial tour guides, sharing knowledge about local landmarks and history. The businessman surprised everyone with his extensive knowledge of Native American traditions in the territories they passed through. The young mother, a former teacher, kept the children engaged with educational games that soon involved the entire bus. Keanu remained a constant calming presence, handling logistics seamlessly while participating in conversations with genuine interest. He shared stories from movie sets not to impress, but to contribute to discussions about perseverance, teamwork, and overcoming obstacles. His humility and kindness set a tone that brought out the best in everyone. By the second sunset, the group had formed bonds that transcended their original travel plans. They shared photos of loved ones, discussed dreams and fears, and offered advice and support for each other's challenges. The bus became a rolling confession booth, classroom, and family room all in one. Even those who had initially been disappointed about missing their flight now spoke of the journey as a gift. Lisa found herself surrounded by a surrogate family who understood her fear and hope. Each mile brought her closer to her father, but also deepened connections that would last long after the journey ended. The children drew pictures for her father, filling pages with colorful get-well wishes. The elderly couple shared wisdom about cherishing every moment with loved ones, while the businessman offered to help Lisa explore career opportunities that would allow her more time with her family. As night fell again, the bus hummed with quiet conversations and peaceful silence. Passengers dozed while others kept vigil, watching the miles pass beneath starlit skies. They were no longer strangers thrown together by circumstance, but a community bound by choice and compassion. The journey had become more than just an alternative to a missed flight. It had become a reminder of humanity's capacity for kindness, understanding, and connection. The Los Angeles skyline appeared on the horizon just as morning light began to break over the city. Lisa pressed her hand against the window, her heart racing as familiar landmarks came into view. The bus had made remarkable time despite the weather delays at the start, thanks to Keanu's careful planning and coordination with local authorities along the route. Her father's hospital lay just 20 minutes from where they would arrive. Throughout the journey, his condition had stabilized. The doctors attributed it partially to the videos and messages Lisa had sent, giving him something to fight for. The entire bus held a collective breath every time she received an update, the group's concern for her father growing with each passing mile. As they navigated through early morning traffic, passengers began exchanging contact information, making plans to stay connected. The elderly couple invited everyone to their grandson's wedding reception, while the businessman offered to host a reunion dinner at his home in 6 months. Sarah, the young mother, had already arranged playdates between her children and several other families they'd met on the journey. The bus pulled into its final stop near Union Station. Keanu had arranged for ride services to take each passenger to their exact destinations, but no one rushed to leave. Instead, they gathered their belongings slowly, helping each other, making sure nothing was forgotten. The children, now awake, gave tearful hugs to their new bus family, extracting promises to stay in touch. Lisa stood frozen, overwhelmed by the moment, until she felt a gentle hand on her shoulder. Keanu had arranged for a private car to take her directly to the hospital. Before she could leave, however, the entire group surrounded her. They formed a circle, holding hands as Tom, the elderly gentleman, offered a quiet prayer for her father. Even those who weren't religious bowed their heads, the moment transcending faith to become about pure human connection. Sarah's oldest child presented Lisa with a handmade card, signed by everyone on the bus. Inside, alongside messages of hope and love, they had each written their phone numbers and email addresses. "We're your family now, too," the little girl said, hugging Lisa tightly. The businessman slipped her his card, telling her to call if she ever needed anything. Job recommendations, references, or just someone to talk to. Keanu walked Lisa to her waiting car, carrying her bag. His final words to her were simple but profound. Family isn't always about blood. Sometimes it's about who shows up when you need them most. The truth of his statement was evident in the faces of the people watching from the bus windows, each one having become part of her story in ways she could never have imagined. As her car pulled away, Lisa watched her travel companions growing smaller in the distance. The bus journey had taken longer than a flight would have, but it had given her something invaluable, a reminder that even in her darkest moments, she wasn't alone. The love and support of strangers had carried her across the country, their collective hope providing strength when her own began to falter. Arriving at the hospital, Lisa found her father awake and responsive. The doctors reported that his condition had improved significantly over the past 36 hours. As she sat beside his bed, holding his hand, she shared stories of her journey, of the actor who had turned an overbooked flight into an adventure, of the families who had become friends, of the love that had carried her home. Her father listened, tears in his eyes, as she described how strangers had become family, how crisis had transformed into blessing. In that sterile hospital room, surrounded by beeping machines and fluorescent lights, Lisa realized that she had received more than just a ride to Los Angeles. She had been given a reminder of humanity's capacity for kindness, a lesson in the power of community, and a story that would inspire hope in others for years to come. Outside the hospital window, the morning sun painted the sky in shades of promise, as somewhere in the city, a busload of travelers said their goodbyes, carrying with them memories of a journey that had become far more than just an alternative to a missed flight. They had become part of a story that would remind everyone who heard it that sometimes the most beautiful destinations aren't places at all, but the connections we make along the way. 3 months after the remarkable bus journey, Lisa's father had made a full recovery. The doctors called it miraculous, but Lisa knew it was more than medicine. It was the power of community that had helped heal him. The group chat they had started on the bus remained active, filled with daily updates, shared celebrations, and continued support. Sarah's children had started a weekly video call with Lisa's daughter Sophie, their friendship blossoming despite the distance. The businessman, James, had helped Lisa secure a better-paying position that allowed her to work remotely, giving her more time with both Sophie and her father. The elderly couple's grandson's wedding had become a reunion point, with most of the bus passengers attending, celebrating not just a marriage but their own enduring connection. Keanu's act of kindness had sparked a chain reaction. Inspired by their experience, several passengers had started a nonprofit organization dedicated to helping families travel during medical emergencies. They named it the Night Bus Foundation, and within months, it had assisted dozens of families facing similar situations to Lisa's. Lisa's father, one strong enough, insisted on meeting everyone who had helped his daughter reach him. They organized a gathering in Los Angeles, where he cooked traditional Mexican dishes and shared stories of his life. The children who had drawn get-well cards now sat on his lap, listening to the same Spanish lullabies he used to sing to Sophie. The media eventually caught wind of the story, but the group protected their experience, understanding that some things were too precious for headlines. Instead, they shared their story personally, in quiet conversations with others facing challenges, offering hope and reminder that kindness still existed in the world. For Lisa, the greatest change wasn't in her circumstances, though those had improved significantly. It was in her perspective. She had learned that family could be found in unexpected places, that crisis could become opportunity, and that sometimes the longest path home could be the most meaningful. The night that had started with desperation in a crowded airport had become the beginning of a journey that would continue to transform lives, one act of kindness at a time. The events of that snowy night at O'Hare International Airport continued to ripple outward, touching lives far beyond those who had been present. The Night Bus Foundation grew, establishing chapters in major cities across the country. Their mission expanded beyond travel assistance to include building support networks for families facing medical crises, inspired by the impromptu family that had formed on their inaugural journey. Lisa's father recovered fully and became a regular volunteer at the foundation, sharing his story with others who felt alone in their struggles. Sophie grew up surrounded by an extended family that transcended traditional boundaries, learning early that love could bridge any distance and that heroes often appeared in unexpected moments of need. Keanu Reeves' quiet act of compassion had transformed a potential crisis into a testament to human kindness. Yet the true magic hadn't come from his celebrity or resources. It had emerged from the choice each passenger made to open their hearts to strangers, to share their stories, and to hold space for others' pain and joy. Their story became a reminder that even in the darkest moments, when time seems shortest and hope feels distant, the human capacity for connection and kindness can light the way home.